This all started months ago when my wife told me to make a seaweed gin.
The seaweed one.
Oh yeah, you've been going on about this for ages.
I don't know if that's weird. I want the seaweed
Alright,
one.
seaweed, fine. I did. It was fine, it was good. But I thought it would be so much cooler if I used some actual New Zealand seaweed instead. So I tested it and distilled it. Problem is, it's pretty freaking nasty. The best way to describe the smell of this is like stinky, sweaty seal colony. Not quite right. Anyway, you guys gave me a bunch of ideas to try turning this into something delicious. How's it going, chasers? I hope you're having a kick-ass week. I'm Jesse, this is Still It, and today we're going to see if we can actually make this work. It's so close, but it's not a flavor that I would actually want in a gin. And I almost gave up on it until I started reading through the comments and got some feedback from the Patreons. So, first things first, a bunch of you recommended toasting the seaweed. This makes so much sense. Nori is normally pre-toasted. Maybe that's what makes seaweed good. The first thing I did was to go back and sample the New Zealand Wakame and the New Zealand giant Kelp and try to figure out kind of a ratio between the two. The New Zealand Wakame had much more of that oceany presence to it. The giant Kelp was kind of just more sweet and slightly seaweedy, but not as intense. So in the end, I settled on a 70-30 split, is what I think is going to work. 70% Kelp, 30% New Zealand Wakame. So I measured out 3 grams of the New Zealand Wakame, 7 grams of the giant Kelp, popped it into the oven at 190 degrees for 3 minutes, gave it a little stir, popped it back in for another 3 minutes, and then pulled it out. Toasting is complete, and it's so crazy. The flavor has, well, the aroma, I don't know what the flavor is going to be like yet, but the aroma has changed very, very little, but the impression has changed tremendously. It's gone from having that really over pungent seal colony stank in the Wakame to being a similar flavor, but now it kind of smells like food. It's still weird, it's still funky, but it's enticing. What I've done is I've split this into 2. One, we're going to prepare the same way as we did before. We're going to stick it into the still and distill it. The second, a bunch of you guys gave me another, what I think could be a very interesting suggestion, which is essentially to steep this in hot water, like a tea, like you're making a dashi. We're not doing fish flakes, because screw that. But I'm going to steep this in hot water for, well, I'll be honest with you, as long as it takes this to go through the still. Ooh. Okay. And then we're going to strain it out, like I'm making a dashi. And the idea here is that maybe, just maybe, water will extract different flavors from the seaweed, or subtly different flavors from the seaweed, compared to alcohol. Okay, let's set this off to the side and we'll get to dealing with putting this into the still. Little baby batch of distillation to test the toasted 70-30 blend of seaweed. So 400 mils of spirit, we'll get that warming up. And 400 mils of the toasted 70-30 seaweed mix. That is, yeah, that works. All right, I'll get this up to 50 degrees Celsius. All right, that is 50 degrees, still off, unplug it to make sure. Cap it up, a little swirl. We'll see you in an hour. Bit of water in there to get it under 40% ABV. Cap on, fire it up. And I await first drips with bated breath. We are up and running. First drips coming in, and like always, we're gonna take a weeny bit off the top If you've been watching my other gin videos, you know this stuff already. I'm not going to go into it too much in this video because this video is really about comparing ingredients and creating a recipe with ingredients, not so much the actual process. If you want to see more of that, here's the other videos for it. But take a little bit off the top, collect 3 hearts. We'll do the same for the dashi version when we get there. Test number 1, proof down to, whoops, oh no, 60% ABV, only a wee bit of it to be fair, but let's bottle that up, put it aside so I don't forget to label it, and move on to our next test, which is exactly the same thing, the toasted 70-30 split, but this time working with the dashi, or the water maceration, I guess. Another 400 mils of neutral / vodka, whatever you want to call it. And this time we're going to proof that down with this. Get it into the still, and we'll get this bad boy heating up. See if there's any difference between the first batch. Team, it is official. The day has finally come. The new Chase the Craft into the AM collaboration shirt is now live. There's a special code in the description down below that'll get you 10% off. I think this thing is freaking cool, man. I wasn't actually sure, but now that I have it and I've seen it in person, I think this is my favorite into the AM collaboration shirt yet. The other two, the astronaut ones, they're dope. I still love them. There's just something kind of special about this. Bear, the illustrator, has completely outdone himself. These things are amazing. So, if you're into the moon shining bright in the woods, this might be the shirt for you. Check the link in the description down below. But right now, I need to go back and see which of these 2 seaweed tests turned out best. Here we have our 2 new samples, both of them 70-30 giant kelp over Wakame, both of them toasted for 6 minutes at 190 degrees Celsius. This is the one that was treated kind of like dashi, steeped in hot water and then added to the still. And this is the one that was added in, you know, gin maceration styles. So, I mean, let's just get stuck in. Right off the bat, both of these are super similar to each other and very similar to this. This is a lot stronger. Intensity's dialed down. The flavor, or the aroma, I should say, is super similar, but it's lost a big chunk of that more rancidy sweatiness. So it's a similar flavor, but now it smells like food, rather than something that you should not go near, let alone eat. Let's give these another go. Interestingly enough, the aroma is more intense on the hot water steeped version. I would have picked the other. This has a more interesting kind of roast seaweed flavor, whereas this is much closer to that kind of sweaty seal ball sack. All right, let's taste it. Okay. There's something almost acrid about this, which is, have I got these wrong? No, I don't. That's bizarre. I would have thought that you would be more likely to get something kind of borderlining on bitter and acrid from the alcohol steeping, not the water steeping, but it seems to be the opposite. And I also would have thought that you'd be more likely to get that more sweaty, like sweaty, funky, gym socky, but fishy note on this side as well. But it's the opposite. Wow. Okay, there we go. So both of these are better than the original, but this one stands out for sure. So we're going to be going with that option. Let's get this out of the way. And you know what? I actually hadn't planned on it, but why not? Let's just jump straight in and try making a gin with the seaweed like this. So 1 litre of alcohol at 50% ABV, 3 grams of giant kelp, 1.5 grams of Wakame, toasted of course, 12 grams of crushed juniper, and 21 grams of uncrushed juniper. followed by 11 grams of lightly crushed coriander, 0.7 grams of Angelica Root, 7 grams of lemon peel, 3 grams of bitter orange powder, and 5 grams of dried orange peel. Now that is a thing of beauty, which we are going to get straight on into the still. We're going to start heating the still up until it gets to 50 degrees Celsius, let it macerate for 1 hour before distillation. Unfortunately, the cows decided to push a fence over and attempt to escape during that distillation run, but crisis averted, distillation run finished. Here is the final product. Let's get stuck in. The bugs are kind of crazy out here tonight. Juniper and citrus on the nose. Smells like a gin, but there's a strange little umami character hiding down in there. And if I didn't know what I was drinking, I don't know if I could place what that was. It's not until you actually have a sip where it kind of opens up and really tells you what it's all about. Now there's a few little flaws with this that I think I want to change before I call this recipe completely done. So let's go over those first. First of all, I think I put a little bit too much, well, actually a lot too much Angelica Root in here. Probably, I think I need to halve it. The earthiness and the kind of, I don't know, like, it's not quite spicy, but just the Angelica Root characteristic pairs really nice with the seaweed. It kind of grounds it and gives it a platform to work on. It makes the umami part of the seaweed kind of make sense on the palate. But it's overpowering it a little bit at the moment. It's just a little bit too much, so I think I'm going to try halving the Angelica Root next time. The second thing is, the lemon is nice, but I wonder if the lemon is almost cancelling the seaweed out. Have you ever had the experience where you're eating sushi? In New Zealand they do this weird thing where they put lemon all over our salmon sushi especially, but you put lemon on the nori and suddenly it kind of doesn't really taste like seaweed anymore. So I think maybe I want to dial the lemon down a little bit as well. But even with those flaws, this is actually quite an interesting and balanced, delicious gin. It's just it's leaning towards, you know, a earthy, junipery gin that has a hint of seaweed. So I think if I dial the Angelica Root and the lemon back a smidge, maybe dial the seaweed up a little bit as well, it'll fix that problem. And the great news is the seaweed, the flavor of the seaweed that's carrying through is exactly now what I had in mind. It has that kind of umami, food-like savory quality, but it has just a hint of funk and almost not quite right, but right where it should be for my taste. And it's bringing that kind of, like, not briny, but ocean-like characteristic to the spirit, which is absolutely epic. Erin, my wife, described it as it smells like under the pier, rather than it smells like seal stink. Now that I am here smelling this and tasting this, there's a small part of me that just can't help myself. And I think it's going to win. I think I want to push this past the line of gin with seaweed into it, into something that is borderline not gin, and really turn this into a gin for the single malt lover. Obviously, if you can stop at this point in the process, but we're going to need another video in this seaweed gin series, I think, team. One more iteration. One more! Maybe, I hope.